Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be visiting the r/relationship advice subreddit and take a look at a frustrating story that leads to a very messy breakup. Make sure to like and subscribe and let me know what you think in the comments. A 23-year-old male, broke up with my 21-year-old girlfriend of 3 years because she wanted to remain a virgin. Now, she wants to get back together but told me she had with someone else when we were broken up. How should I proceed? I met my ex 3 years ago. We lived on campus at uni in different halls of residence. After a few months, we got together and for the most part had a very happy relationship. There was always one issue though. My ex grew up in a very religious home. Her father is a pastor. She has been open with her family that she does not share their faith. They weren't happy about it, but accepted that she has to make her own choices on that. Nevertheless, I think some of that religious upbringing was still in her mind. I grew up in a different religion, but was never very serious about it, and am no longer religious. Our relationship was pretty normal, except that she told me very early that she was a virgin and wanted to stay that way until she was married. It wasn't for religious reasons, as I mentioned, she isn't religious. But she was very focused on not disappointing her dad. We did other things, just not intercourse. I never had much luck with girls growing up, and going into the relationship, I was a virgin. And I still am, at least if you classify being a virgin as never having had intercourse. Anyway, I was becoming more resentful of the fact that everyone I know was having normal sexual relationships and we weren't. I couldn't understand why she didn't want to have a full relationship, though of course I never pressured her about it. I felt that while I was at uni and pretty broke, getting married was something for the future. Last year I was in my last year of uni and she was working in her first professional job. Her degree was shorter than mine, so she finished uni first despite being younger than me. She was talking a lot about all of these successful guys she met at work, which did make me feel lesser as I was still a broke uni student. Coupled with her still not wanting a full relationship, it did make me feel more resentful. We had some arguments about it, and after a while I felt that I should end the relationship as we wanted different things and our lives were on different paths. It was awful. She was crying a lot and I felt terrible afterwards. Anyway, it has been nearly 6 months since we broke up. We haven't been in touch at all for most of that time. I have not been involved with anyone else in that time as I was 100% focused on finishing my degree. I have finally finished uni and am about to start my first professional job. She recently got in touch again and asked to meet up. I was hesitant, but decided we had so much good history that I should hear her out. She told me she's been missing me terribly these past 6 months, that she thinks she wants to get back together and is open to having a relationship now. I asked her why now and she looked uncomfortable. After a little prying, she said she had a short-term fling with one of the older guys at work while we were broken up, which of course was fine as she wasn't my girlfriend anymore. Anyway, she said he persisted with her until she started having sex with him. She ended it with him recently. She was clear that it was consensual, but that the guy was very persistent with pursuing sex with her. I was gutted. I couldn't understand why she'd make me wait all those years, but was fine doing it with some new guy she'd only been seeing a short time. I asked if the reason she was open to having a relationship now is because she wasn't a virgin anymore. She said yes. I asked her to give me some space to process all this. I'm conflicted and would love some advice on this. I have missed her a lot and still have strong feelings for her, but at the same time it feels like I was strung along for years. It's hard to put my finger on why I don't want to take her back. Everything logically makes sense for us to get back together. I'd even get to finally have a relationship with her, but I feel awful about this whole thing and don't want to ignore those feelings. This original post was created in January of 2024, and in early February, OP provided an update post. Hello again, I appreciate people taking the time to comment on my last post. The response was a lot more than I expected with over 2,000 comments. I'm amazed so many people wanted to comment about my situation. Thank you. Warning, this post is long. I have kept a daily journal since I was 16. A lot of what follows is dumps from my journal. Yes, I know I'm not concise. I'm going to refer to my ex as Ellie, which is not her real name. I'd like to write a bit about the comments because so many people took the time to provide their thoughts and I appreciate that. The majority of comments were some variation of move on, a clean break, a strong recommendation with a lot to recommend it. A minority said, give her a chance and see how it goes. Plenty calling me an arsehole for ending it because I wanted sex in our relationship, or for being obsessed with her virginity, that I dumped her because she wouldn't put out. And quite a few say my breaking up with her made her feel like is necessary to keep a guy and that it drove her heartbroken into the next guy's bed. There were a few "she's pregnant" comments, not that I know of, it's not impossible, but if that happens, it won't be anything to do with me. The dude saying I should fuck her and leave her, no, I would never use her like that, no matter our past. Ellie and I were a loving couple for years. That counts for something even after we broke up. Feeling hurt doesn't justify using her, or anyone else for that matter. As for comments that I have some hang up about taking her virginity, my issue when together was that we weren't having sex in our relationship, not whether she was a virgin or not. Her being a virgin was her reason for being abstinent, but wasn't directly an issue either way to me. If she hadn't been a virgin and wanted to be abstinent, I would have been in the same situation. The title of my last post was not great, really. I broke up because we were not having sex, not because she was a virgin. Bear in mind, for 3 years, Ellie had everything she wanted from our relationship. Boyfriend, love, affection, loyalty, support, and a guy who respected her wishes to be abstinent. While she got 100% of what she wanted, for me, there was a big element missing, and there was no way to reconcile that. Either we were having sex or not having it. Sex requires both to say yes, and that wasn't going to happen. With hindsight, I should have ended the relationship early on, when Ellie first told me she wanted to not have sex until marriage. When we got together, I was a naive 19-year-old who had never had a girlfriend before, so I kind of went along with things because I really liked her and got along with her so well. I fell in love with her and then kind of felt stuck in a relationship that wasn't what I wanted. I've learned from this and won't make that mistake in the future. I want to make active, not passive choices in future relationships. To not just go along with things because that's what the other person wants. Our views about in our relationship were not compatible, so I ended the relationship rather than waiting any longer, hoping she'd change her mind. It was scary to take that step, and I put it off for way too long because I didn't want to hurt her. But I couldn't stay in the relationship just for her. I had to also consider myself too. My mistake was waiting so long to get to that point. I regret that, as it caused her more hurt than if I'd ended it early on. Many of you say that just isn't that important, but for me it is, at least as part of a relationship. You can disagree, that's fine. Some people are fine being in no relationships. No judgment from me, but that's not what I want. Some people took issue with me saying I felt she strung me along. On reflection, that's fair. Ellie was clear to me about wanting to not have sex until marriage. I foolishly stayed way too long, hoping she'd change her mind one day. She didn't. That was my mistake. I strung myself along. She never led me on in any way. It hurt to learn that she had sex with the next guy relatively quickly after I waited so long, but she is my ex, so that is not my business anymore. She is allowed to change her mind. She can have sex or not with whoever she chooses. I don't get a say in that. My hurt is an emotional response, not a logical one. Logically, I see she did nothing wrong by me. I'll get over it. It's just my bruised ego if I'm honest with myself. Feeling I'm somehow a lesser man because she took that step with the next guy. I know objectively that isn't true, but I sure feel it. I was not a perfect boyfriend and I have made mistakes. I have learned from them. I don't regret breaking up with Ellie and still think it was the right decision for me. Enough background. A few things have happened. Last weekend was the Australia day-long weekend. I was on a camping trip in the Grampians. It was so nice to be in nature, to do some bushwalks with friends, and to decompress. It felt good to talk about the Ellie situation with my mates around the campfire. Most of them knew Ellie pretty well from our years together, and they had a range of views, just like the commenters on my post. And I got the usual good-natured shit about still being a virgin. I learned there's an expensive bottle of scotch they bought a while ago that's going to have its seal cracked when mine is. One great question a friend asked was whether I would have ever decided to reach out and take Ellie back if she never reached out to me first. The answer is no. It was so obvious to me. That cut through a lot of the confusion for me. I was being too passive in this situation and needed to do what I wanted, not just react to what Ellie wanted. By the time I was on the way home, I had decided to not get back together with her, but that was moot. When I was driving home and got a mobile signal again, no mobile network where we had camped, the network delivered a bunch of messages from Ellie all at once. She said she was wrong to ask me to get back together and that she's back with Tim. She also texted that the thing with Tim is more serious than she told me when she last met with me. She apologized for misleading me about her and Tim's relationship. If you remember, she called it a fling before. She asked if we could meet to talk about it. I was not happy, so I just texted back no. Not very mature of me, but I wasn't in the mood to hear more about all this. And I was surprised and pissed off that she lied to me. That seemed very out of character for her. She tried calling me, but I didn't want to answer. She sent another text saying, "Tim and I had a fight. I shouldn't have come to you. And finally, I'm sorry." When I got home, I was an idiot and let my curiosity get the better of me. I looked up Tim online. His real given name is uncommon, so it wasn't hard to find. I found him on LinkedIn, which gave me his full name. Ellie is one of his connections, and he works at the same firm, so I was confident it's him. He's a director at their firm, which is one level below partner. He also has pics on Instagram, lots of posts about his adventures around the world at various events and exotic places, as well as shots with an expensive looking car. A few photos of him with Ellie with their arms around each other in Singapore in November. I guess that confirms it was serious. He wouldn't have public pics with her for a casual fling. All that just made me feel bad. No good comes from comparing myself to my ex's successful boyfriend. Ellie is not my girlfriend and I'm not in competition with Tim, so I won't do that again. My ego's bruised enough already. I have been living a very frugal life my whole time at uni. I'm poor as so I know I can feel inferior when I see people with wealth. That's another problem to sort out. Anyway, all that was on Sunday afternoon. On Tuesday evening, Ellie knocked at my door. She said that she knew I didn't want to talk to her, but she felt bad about everything and hoped I would let her explain herself, clear the air, then I'd never see her again if that's what I wanted. I let her in. I was not happy with the recent events, but figured I might at least get a clearer idea of what's going on. It was a long, heavy conversation over 4 hours, but here's the gist as I remember it. When we broke up, she was devastated. She said it took a couple of months before she started to feel a bit better. She missed me constantly and wanted to see me the whole time, but when I ended it, we agreed to keep apart and heal. In September, she met Tim at work. He manages a different team. She doesn't work for him. She said he was very charming and attractive and showed almost immediate interest in her. They got to know each other and he asked her out. She was worried it was a rebound, but felt so much better getting his attention that she went along with it. After dating for a while, she developed feelings for him and that later led to a sexual relationship. It wasn't a fling and she had dated him for a while beforehand. I asked whether he had pressured her into sex. She said she was trying not to upset me. She thought if she gave the impression she was reluctant to have sex with Tim, I wouldn't think as badly of her. So it was a story to try and spare my feelings. I told her it just made me worried she had been assaulted. She looked shocked at that and said no way, she was actually the one who initiated their sexual relationship. I said, although I don't like that she lied to me, I can understand why. I don't think she did anything wrong changing her mind about abstinence. Yes, I was hurt when she told me she was having sex, but I have no right to judge her for anything. She's a single adult and it's her life. I don't think badly of her. She burst into tears and said something like, "I thought you must hate me now." I assured her that I didn't. She said she was sad it didn't work for us, but that she never would have dropped her virginity commitment if we had not broken up. After we broke up, she decided that it was a commitment she made to her dad when she was still a kid, and it was messing with the life she wants now. So by the time she and Tim got into their relationship, she had already decided she was ready for with the right person. I asked about her dad and she just said he doesn't need to know. I asked about why she asked to get back together. Tim is older. She told me he's 32 and has been at the firm for 10 years. One day at work, one of the women made a snarky comment to Ellie about being another one of Tim's girls. She did some digging and it turns out that Tim has a history. He has dated a long list of women from work. Several of them were young graduate employees, just like Ellie. The rumor around the office is that Ellie is just the next girl to get used by him. She was horrified. She accused Tim of using her. They argued and she told him it was over. Soon after that, she came to me. She felt as if we might be able to rekindle things now that she was open to a relationship. But my hesitation and time to calm down made her realize that was a mistake. Over the weekend, Tim asked her to work things out. She decided to give it a chance. She tried to call me, but they went to voicemail. I was camping. So she sent those messages instead. So I guess that's settled. I don't want her back and she's in a relationship, so she doesn't want me back either. We chatted a bit about how our families are going. She congratulated me on finally finishing uni. She asked if I had been seeing anyone, and when I told her I'd been studying hard and working a lot since exams, but just retail jobs with no time for girls, she laughed and said I'm still a big nerd. She hoped we could be friendly if we ever see each other, but she wants to keep out of contact out of respect for her relationship with Tim. She wants to give it a real chance of working, which is fair enough. She gave me a hug, said thank you for understanding, and left. So there you have it. Ellie involved me in her relationship drama. I would have preferred she hadn't, but at least it's sorted now. I'm glad I paid attention to my feelings and took time out to consider things, as it could have been very messy if I had taken her back. Trusting my gut has been the biggest lesson for me in all this. I still care for her despite recent events. It seems like she is dealing with a lot of complicated things between her new relationship and work gossip. I wish her well and hope she will be happy whether it's with Tim or not. She was my first love and I expect I'll always have warm memories of her, but I am clear now that I don't want her back. She is my past and I want to look forward. Well, this has become an essay. Tutors at uni always told me I was too waffly in my writing. Well, fuck those guys. I'm not a student anymore. I can now focus on launching my new career with no distractions. I've worked so hard for so long to get here. My new job starts on Monday. It's going to be so great building actual real experience in my new profession, not just endless theory. I'll be earning much better money and I've got graduation in May to look forward to as well. I'm open to finding someone new, but that is way down my priority list. I'm not going to actively pursue that anytime soon. Cheers everyone for your comments and advice. This next post was created pretty recently, about 2 weeks from the time of recording. It was made by user SR Bias, and it is titled, I, a 50-year-old male, just learned that my spouse, 47-year-old female, was unfaithful years ago in marriage. She came clean from guilt. Where do I go from here? This will be quite a lengthy read because I'm laying out everything to get honest opinions with all the context. There's a TLDR at the end for those who'd rather skip the backstory. I know that most people go incognito with a throwaway account for this kind of post, but I wanted this to be authentic using my real account. I didn't want anyone to think this was disingenuous. If we know each other in real life or you find me on my other socials, let's keep our chats here or in PMs. I don't want anyone harassing anybody, and I have a 16-year-old daughter who has been spared this drama so far. I tied the knot shortly after high school, and let's just say, if my marriage were a collegiate course, it would be F Up 101. It was a masterclass in what not to do, featuring every red flag in the book. I was fresh-faced and barely off on my life journey, thinking I'd hit the jackpot. I'd assumed I'd accomplished what my parents did, that being the poster couple for marital bliss. I was so naive, always giving the benefit of the doubt. Meanwhile, my then wife, fresh from escaping her parental fortress of solitude, went bat crazy, deciding that living life to the fullest didn't include me in the picture. Before I knew it, I was Mr. Mom with our toddler while she was trapped underneath a few individuals, making up for lost time. After finally catching her in the act, I filed for a divorce and braced for the impact. Divorcing in '97 in the heart of the Bible Belt was not favorable towards the husband back then. What followed was straight out of a horror movie. I paid my attorney $5,000 to watch her take everything from my guitars and video games. She even claimed keepsakes from a departed relative, and the judge seemed happy to grant her every wish. Not only did I bid farewell to everything I owned, but my time with my son got slashed to a mere Wednesday afternoon and alternating weekends. My faith in women was broken. I went on a few dates here and there, but mostly kept it to casual encounters and dinners. I never let anyone get too close. But in early 1999, at a friend's birthday party, I met a woman whose marriage had crashed harder than mine. She'd had a stillbirth 6 months into the pregnancy, and her husband dared to bring his girlfriend to the funeral. She was heartbroken, to say the least, to learn about her husband's affair and the end of her marriage on the day they laid her daughter to rest. We sat on a couch that night, swapping tales of romantic ruin. She was clever, and to me, that is an instant connection. It's rare for me to find someone who makes me laugh instead of vice versa. As I headed home, I couldn't shake her from my thoughts, kicking myself for not asking for her number. The next, my phone rang and it was her. She had gotten my phone number from someone we both knew and asked, "Would you like to get food sometime?" I said, "Now sounds great." So I drove to her grandmother's house and off we went on what turned out to be what I still consider the perfect date. Now I get it, we were both lonely and had our hearts broken, but trust me, this was no spark. It was an inferno. And believe it or not, we've been inseparable since that day. We have not spent a night apart. That was 25 years ago, with us marrying a year after our meeting. Go ahead and facepalm, I know how it sounds, but it's hard to put the connection between us into words. I'm still shaking my head in disbelief. Our families adored the two of us together. I was certain I had found my soulmate, if you believe in that, and I was certain she felt the same. We enjoyed each other's company, and our lives meshed perfectly. As with life, however, it finds those moments of bliss to take a giant shit on you. In 2006, I began feeling ill. Eating resulted in violent illness, which I initially thought was a virus. But after a week with no improvement, it was clear this was something else. I was admitted to the local hospital and underwent numerous tests. When I was first admitted, I weighed 222 pounds at a height of 6'2". Within a year, I had dropped to 146 pounds, and my condition dumbfounded the doctors. My health was deteriorating rapidly. Throughout the ordeal, she never left my side, her hand in mine, begging me not to leave her. In late 2007, a last-ditch effort sent me to the Cleveland Clinic, where a young doctor rushed me into surgery. When I awoke 3 hours later, she was there, hand in mine, with a smile. It was a success. I was cured. While I'll spare you the details, it involved my colon. Finally, I could eat and move without agony. My life resumed, and we were happy again. The following year, she received a lucrative job offer in her field, earning more than I did. That didn't bother me at all. She worked hard, and she'd earned it. After her miscarriage, my wife was unable to conceive. We had been trying since 2000, and eventually came to terms with the fact that it might not happen. In 2010, we got a call from the state of Minnesota about a 2-year-old girl who had been taken from her mother due to drug-related charges. They asked if we would consider adopting her because the mother had requested she be placed with family members before her parental rights were terminated. My wife and I drove for 30 hours to meet her, and after a few months, we adopted her and welcomed her into our home. Our daughter faced social challenges and had endured abuse, leading the two of us to decide one of us needed to be at home with her. As mentioned, my wife earned significantly more, so it made sense for me to be the one to step into the role. I dedicated each day to supporting our daughter's mental health. While I played a part, I can't claim all the credit for this. Her preschool, kindergarten, and therapist were instrumental in her learning to socialize and trust again. Eventually, I took up freelance journalism, so I was home when our little one finished her school day. Our evenings were family time, and we took small trips on weekends. It was in 2017 that my wife returned from work one evening, deeply shaken by what she told me was a workplace argument. Despite my attempts to console her, she remained incorrigible. She was declaring her intent to find a new job. She'd never had any issues before, so I was stunned. For days, she was a mess and withdrawn. When I pressed for details, she'd say, "It would only upset you, let me deal with it." True to her word, she left for a new company within a week, accepting a 15% reduction in pay. I should have questioned it then, but she never gave me cause for concern. Once she began her new role, life returned to normal and our family happily moved forward. In 2022, I published my first novel with an independent publisher, fulfilling a lifelong dream. I could sense the pride emanating from both my wife and daughter. I had achieved this milestone before my 50th birthday, and I couldn't wait to start on my second one. And now, ladies and gentlemen, this is where my world breaks. In 2023, as I was finishing up my new novel, my 27-year-old son from my first marriage died suddenly of a heart attack. He had an underlying condition that none of us knew about. I want everyone to understand that when you say, "I couldn't imagine my child dying," you truly can't. There is no pain quite like it. My wife and daughter, who also felt his loss deeply, did their best to support me, but there is no way to deal with such a tragedy. In the months following his death, I immersed myself in my work, striving to complete my second book for him. On the day I finished it in January, my father passed away after a long battle. Dad had been ill for a long time. You think you can prepare yourself for that, but that's a lie you tell yourself. The loss was hard, and my daughter was instrumental in getting me back on my feet. My second book was released in February, and I tried to smile as I had my release party. At the beginning of April, I started feeling better, writing outlines for my third novel, and doing the same things I'd always done with my wife and daughter. My wife and I have a Wednesday tradition where she picks a random recipe she finds online and we cook it together. On April 3rd, while making crockpot chicken tacos, I thanked her for everything. She asked why, and I thanked her for everything she'd done to get me through the tough times. I shared a lot of pent-up emotions, telling her I couldn't have managed without her. She started crying, then weeping, and soon she was sobbing uncontrollably. I tried to comfort her with a hug, but she pushed me away. I apologized, not realizing my words would stir such a reaction. Suddenly, she confesses her infidelity. I laughed, mistaking it for a joke. She grabs my shoulders and then details how, back in 2017, a 28-year-old at her former job started flirting with her, and she reciprocated. She believed it was innocent, yet it persisted. My wife has always feared growing old. Her birthdays were days she dreaded every year. She admitted that the attention from a younger man was exhilarating. She told me that turning 40 had sent her into a tailspin and that she couldn't talk to me about it because I would have just shrugged it off. He invited her to leave work early and come to his place one day. She couldn't understand why she chose to. Maybe it was the thrill. She said she didn't know, but she went and ended up sleeping with him. Afterwards, she felt terrible glaring at her keychain in his driveway because it had a photo of me holding our daughter. She drove home, and that's when she lied about having a workplace argument. She never wanted to return there. It's why she suddenly went somewhere else. She then told me she wanted to tell me, but didn't have the fortitude to do it. I remained silent, just wide-eyed and open-mouthed. She apologized, saying she couldn't live with it any longer. I just shook my head, unable to speak a single word. She offered to leave if that's what I wanted, to attend counseling, or even to beg for my forgiveness. Instead, I picked up my AirPods and phone and walked out. I wandered from 6 in the evening until almost 11 that night. When I returned, she was on the love seat, asking if I was ready to talk. I shook my head again, went to my office where I had a couch and slept there. The next day, after our daughter left for school, she asked if I had anything to say. I said yes. I questioned why she brought this up after the worst year of my life. Why couldn't she have kept it to herself until I could somewhat deal with something of this magnitude? She just looked away. I scoffed and told her to go to work and to try not to f anyone during her lunch break. That would have been April 4th. Those were the last words I said to her until last night. She had attempted to talk to me several times, but I would just walk past her into my office, trying to focus on my upcoming science fiction comedy book. Writing something funny is challenging when the thought of your spouse rolling around with another man stuck in her consumes your thoughts. A week ago, my daughter asked in the car if everything was okay, and I lied to her, which made me feel sick. Then, last night, my wife came to the office door and asked, "Are we getting a divorce?" I looked at her and replied, "Looks like it." She started crying and closed the door. I haven't consulted an attorney, and the thought of divorce hadn't crossed my mind until she mentioned it. That's why I wrote this essay. Where do I go from here? How do I start to untangle this mess? I have no desire for therapy. I don't even want to step outside. I'm broken at this moment. The burden of everything has been overwhelming. There's been so much to bear this past year. What do you say to someone who has been by your side through it all, only to tear your heart apart? Thank you for reading to the end. And for those who are part of the TLDR crowd, my wife decided to go home with a younger man, felt guilty about it, and quit her job. She waited 8 years to tell me about it.